Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to show you how I painted my Gossamid Archers for my Sylvaneth army in Age of Sigmar. At the time of recording, I only have one fully painted army right now, and it is my Sylvaneth army for Warhammer Age of Sigmar. I think it's around 2,500 points and everything's painted, ready to go. I still haven't done many games with it, but still, it's done and I'm happy with that. Recently, I was really happy to add some extra units to it, and I started with the Lady of Vines, which I painted over on Patreon. So if you want to see a really detailed video on how I did her, please check out our Patreon, and there's loads of tutorials on there every week. Recently, Warhammer Community shared an article on my army, which was really awesome, and it was so cool for me to see these, I don't know, proper shots with some scenery and stuff like that. So thanks to them for featuring the army. It's got me really buzzed for it, and I think I'll add some more units later down the line, but maybe I should get some games in first of all. I did also paint the Gossamid Archers, and I thought let's share those on YouTube, as they're a great kind of model that will show you how to paint all of my army basically, as it's got the green skin that I did for some of the other miniatures, and of course the wood and the gold and things like that. So let's get into painting these awesome minis. I'm going to use the airbrush in this tutorial, but you don't need one. I just used it to kick things off with a couple base layers, and here I'm doing Rhinox Hide over the whole mini, as having brown for most of the miniature is pretty useful. For the skin, I'm going to use these two paints. So one is deep green from Model Colour, and it's really rich and powerful, and then the other is Green Sky, and you can get this from Vallejo Model Colour, but I've got the AK version, and this is a very pale, powerful green, and it's awesome for highlighting the skin. I start with a thin layer of dark green, but you could just start with deep green to be honest and build up the layers slowly, but this is a nice little introduction for the deep green. Then I start to spray some deep green from above, and I want to leave some of the dark green in the muscles. I think I personally left too much. So you want to almost cover the whole thing with deep green and just leave a really small amount in the very, very dark areas. If anything, I would cover most of it with deep green, because it's so easy to add shadows later if you feel you want more contrast. You can see here on the back of the arm, I get some nice shadows forming. So just take your time to build this up. If you're brushing it on, then just try to follow the shapes of the muscles and gradually layer it up nice and smoothly. I then mix in my Green Sky. It's very powerful paint, and you'll see just adding a little bit changes the tone quite a lot. So you have to get to learn these colours, but just add a little bit to the cup and you'll be able to tell if you've got the colour right. So I try to do highlights as accurately as I can, but don't worry if you can't get them looking perfect, because we'll go back in with the deep green to shadow the highlights and make them look a little better in a moment. Now I turn the model almost upside down and I go back to the deep green, and I'm just spraying from below. And this will blend in those highlights and also make sure we have shadows in the right places. And the deep green will be really vibrant now we're spraying it over this pale highlight colour that we did before. While I've got the airbrush out, I thought I might as well spray the wing membranes. So I took some Ahriman Blue and I added a little bit of Militarum green contrast, and that just adjusted the tone to make it a little less blue, more kind of turquoisey, but the earthy green I think really works to tone this down, and then it fits in with the rest of the Sylvaneth army, as opposed to a very bright blue. I did the same method with the skin, and I built up the highlights by gradually adding in some Pastel Blue from AK, and then once I got a really nice bright highlight in the centre, I went back to that original base coat and I diluted it a lot more so I could spray the ends and just gradually glaze it in, and I think this is the best way to do a nice blend but also get very rich and vibrant colours. With the airbrushing done, I go back to blocking in some of the base colours, and I start with doing the Rhinox Hide brown and cover up the areas that I obviously sprayed with green. And I don't get this too perfect because I quite like a little bit of a green tint where it's very near the body, Not like OSL, but just an environmental effect, like the green of the skin is kind of reflecting into the wood. So I'll leave that up to you how much of that you cover up, but I just diluted the Rhinox Hide a little bit and didn't go fully opaque where it was near that green. And I think it's a subtle, easy thing to do, and it looks pretty cool. So this is probably going to be the most time consuming step now, because we're going to layer up and highlight the green skin. But this is where you want to take your time, because this is what's going to make the miniature look awesome, having the nice bright green skin. And then areas like the wood, we don't really need to spend so much time on, as we've just done that focal area really nicely. So you can see where I did the glaze of the deep green, it's really toned it down. And now I just go back to a mix of green sky and deep green. You might need to experiment to get the mix correct, as you obviously want to do a slightly brighter colour for the highlight, but only a little bit. So I did a little mix, made sure it was the right kind of brightness to blend in nicely, and if it wasn't, I adjusted it. You can see I'm trying to push the highlights to the top of the muscles, so remember that muscles don't have edges, so don't edge highlight them. Just try to think of where the light would hit them, and paint them nice and softly like natural rounded shapes. I'm doing my brush strokes normally pushing towards the top of the muscles, and there's kind of an end point here like on the back of the tricep, so I just push the highlight to the top there. I'm trying to really draw the focus around the face and everything like that, so as I build up I'll get brighter colours around there. I actually ended up doing the hair in the exact same way, and at this point I didn't think I would. I thought I'd do a different colour, so do the hair at the same time basically, because I had to remake all those mixes, and it could have saved me some time doing it while I was doing this skin. I just gradually add green sky. Like I said earlier, it's very powerful paint, which is great. It makes it really stand out when you build up to this colour. But just gradually add in. I think I made 3 mixes of green sky and deep green before I got up to using pure green sky. And it's up to you how much contrast you have. So if you want a more subtle green, then don't add too many highlights, but you can keep going to taste. And if you find your blending isn't looking too good, you can actually repeat that glazing step with the airbrush and blend it with that deep green. Eventually I finish with highlights of pure green sky, and as you can see you really do get adequate contrast out of just those 2 paints. Well, you've got the third one with the shadow, but it's mostly these 2, and they're very nice to work with because they're opaque and smooth, so that's why I really recommend them. Originally I regretted not doing the kind of box art blue skin and going for this green one. When I redid these miniatures, actually I really like it, so yeah, I'm glad I made that choice. So the green definitely took quite a long time, but it was totally worth it, and now I'm going to save some time by doing the wood in a very simple way. So if you're not new to the channel, then you'll know that Gobi Brown is one of my favourite paints from scale 75, so I just do a mix of Rhinox Hide with Gobi Brown and do some very general layers. I'm kind of doing a loose wood grain, so I'm not doing this super detailed, but I just make sure my brush strokes all go in the same direction, so there's some kind of subtle texture. But really I'm just building up fast layers here, and if I get a wood grain effect, then that's fine. But it's more about just highlighting in the right areas. And then I'll build up and do some pure Gobi Brown in some of the more focal areas. You can kind of spend as long as you want on this step. You could just highlight a few areas, or if you want it to be really detailed, just take some extra time to do fine highlights in certain areas. If you want, you can add some brighter highlights. I added some light earth to the Gobi Brown, but I only did these highlights around the top areas to draw the eye to here, and also I didn't want to highlight every single part. It would just take too long. You can see I'm being far more detailed here with some finer brush strokes, and you could do this all over if that's what you want to do. So adjust this to how much time you want to spend. If it's for a gaming army, if you wanted this to be a display mini, you could do all of these steps, just take more time on them. Okay, now the scary part, and let's make it not scary because we're going to do some non-metallic gold fairly quick, and the base coat is going to be Rhinox Hide with this brownish green. And then I'll mix in some of this green brown, confusing I know, And the final highlights, we'll do some green brown mixed with some of this fantastic pastel yellow. And this is a great non-metallic metal recipe for, any kind of miniature. Here we're going to skip a few steps and just do it reasonably quickly. So I base coat everything with that brownish green and Rhinox Hide, and because it's a little bit green, it doesn't jar too much with the rest of the mini. If you do a really kind of ochre, pure yellow gold, I do think it's a little bit jarring. I want quite an antique-y, subtle gold that works with the rest of the mini. Now I skip straight to green ochre, where there's normally I'd probably build it up to get a perfect transition, but here we're just looking to skip a few steps, do it neatly but not super blended, and then we'll give the impression of gold, but we haven't spent forever on it, and that's really important. And this is how it was possible for me to do a whole army using non-metallic gold. I can't say I recommend it. I don't think I'll do a non-metallic army ever again, but I've done it now, so I just thought I'd share with you how I managed to do that across a whole army. Now I do the first mix of the green brown with the pastel yellow. So here I will do a couple mixes, and as we move through the highlights, it does get a lot quicker, and I just add a little bit of pastel yellow here on the corner. So yeah, there's only 2 steps to go, and you could sort of work on each area individually, or you could do one highlight on everything, then move on to the next highlight. But yeah, I think it's not too bad after you've done that first layer, and it is pretty effective. You just need to learn really where to place the highlights to get that kind of bang for your buck. It doesn't take too long, but it does give the impression of gold. All the leaves were base coated with olive green from Vallejo, and the coverage of this paint is just fantastic, which is why I used it. One coat and it looks really great. And then I highlighted it with some golden olive, which has a lot of yellow in, and again, it's got amazing coverage, and that's the reason I've recommended these paints. It makes things really easy. I do a very quick glow in all of those kind of recessed rune areas, and I just use the deep green diluted heavily, and then it flows into the areas quite nicely, and I'm not worried if it gets, on the edges and stuff like that. That kind of helps make it look glowing. So yeah, just do it nice and thin. You might need to do a couple passes to make it opaque, but it really picks out these details super easily, especially as we have that really dark wood. I think it stands out. And I repeat that process with Escorpena green from Game Colour, and unlike our cold skin, this is a very yellow saturated green, so it does stand out from that. So you've got 2 different types of green, and again, it's just really quick and nice and diluted. Run it into the recesses and you'll get a very fast glow effect, which I think really helps break apart the brown on the wood. I decided to use this on the skin as well, and I thought, why not do it for the eyes? So yeah, it's quite a quick way to do the eyes, and I think actually it's fairly subtle. As it is a green, it doesn't stand out massively because the green is so saturated and vibrant. I think it really fits in with a theme. So yeah, I like that. I hadn't done it before because I normally had helmets on these miniatures, but I really like how the vibrant green looks on the eyes. I had to do a fast non-metallic silver on the arrowheads, and I base coated them in some dark grey, and then I just gave a highlight of dark blue pale. And for this, I really kind of just focused on one side as if the light was coming in from the left, and then I almost left the other side completely dark. And that's a really quick way to make it look non-metallic, but obviously not spending tons of time. And then I just finished that with a highlight of blue-grey from AK, and that will do the job, to be honest. It's all about just placement, and again, it's not blended, but having those very sharp highlights with a lot of contrast will give the feel of non-metallic. And up close, maybe it doesn't look amazing, but on the gaming table, which is what these are for, I think it's cool. If you don't like it, then just get the bolt gun metal out. At this point, we're looking good. The miniatures are almost done, and I blocked in the wings black after spraying them. And now I knew I had quite a tricky task ahead because I should pick out those veins on the wings, which, at the time I didn't enjoy at all, but it was well worth it because the wings really make these figures look stunning. So yeah, a little bit of a fiddly job, but like I said, we've saved time on other areas, so let's make these look good. So I go back to using the same contrast paint that I mixed in with the blue, which is the Militarum green. I just very carefully run this around the recesses. I mixed in a tiny bit of the Thousand Suns blue just to take the edge off the green and make it work, but I did want the green to kind of contrast against the blue nicely. So really, there's nothing else to do apart from get your detail brush and try and do it carefully. I think if you made a big mistake and got it all over the pale parts, you could try and remove it or re-airbrush it, but just take your time, get it in there, and yeah, it wasn't much fun, this, I have to admit. But it did look great, and it does look better than just leaving it with the airbrushing. I did find any mistakes I made, I could cover up with the AK Pastel Blue, and because it's such an opaque paint, it did make it not a horrible job. I ended up correcting some mistakes and thought, actually, I'll add a bit of a brighter highlight with the brush. So I built up some of this blue in the centres again to try and draw your eye in to the middle of the miniature. I highlighted the black with Petroleum Grey from scale 75, and this has a subtle purple tint to it, which is why I chose it. And I must admit, I was doing these on a time limit. I only had a week to do them, which isn't a lot of time to paint a whole unit in my opinion. And so I only did one highlight on the black at this stage. So I'd like to add another highlight, maybe add in a little bit of some pastel violet to keep that purple theme going. But actually, black with one perfectly neat highlight looks pretty good. So I haven't noticed since that it's lacking any highlights. I think it looks okay. I used some fantastic tufts from Gamer's Grass, and I used the dry green in various sizes. I've actually gone for the tiny tufts, I think a 2mm high. And then I finished by gluing on one of my favourite ever products, which is Ground Base from Reality and Scale. And yeah, you can only get it from this one shot, but it's basically some broken up bark and little bits of rocks and things like that. But I absolutely love it because you just PVA glue it onto the base. And that's all you do for the basing. And together with those tufts, I really love the look of the basing. It's one of the things I really like on the army, and yeah, it is very, very fast. So please check out that product. It's a really, really great one. And there you go. That is the finished unit. And you can see what I just said about the basing. I think it looks really natural, and all I did was glue a tuft on, glue that product on. I definitely think you could make it yourself by grinding up some bark and little stones and things like that, but Reality and Scale make such a good product. They do it in different colours. This is the medium brown, and they do a darker and a lighter one. I think there's a minimum order on their website, but I would just order all 3 pots of this, and then I think you hit the minimum order, and yeah, it's just fantastic. Anyway, looking at the miniatures overall, I hope you enjoyed the video. And it was fairly quick. I didn't want to spend loads of time explaining each step because this is really an army painting video. If you want to go more in depth on things like the non-metallic gold, then please check out the Patreon. We're doing non-metallic gold videos all the time, and I actually go over this recipe in a lot more detail on that Lady of Vines video. But back to these, I really like them. I didn't really fancy painting them just because, I started my Sylvaneth army a couple years ago, and I guess the hype for it had gone. But this is probably my favourite unit they've made for the army, and it was really nice to revisit that green skin, which, like I said, I wasn't sure that it was the right decision to do the skin green, but having another go at it and actually doing the hair this way really made a difference. I think the blue wings really set off the green. And what I like about this is it's not a monochromatic palette, but it's fairly limited because we have, 3 different greens with the leaves, the skin, and that glow. And then the wings aren't a really strong contrasting colour because, of course, they're a blue, but they have a lot of green in it. So I really like how it's quite a tight little palette. And like I said, with the gold, we have a tint of green in there, so even that doesn't stand out. I think the non-metallics, this picture is obviously kind of far away, which is almost what it's like when it's on the gaming table. And you can see even the little silver arrowheads are quite effective. and they weren't many steps. So like I said, I don't know if I'll recommend doing an army with non-metallic metal. I have finished the army, so any new units I have to keep it consistent and do it with non-metallic metal. But yeah, I'm not going to do that again. I really like the look of metallics because you have another opportunity for contrast. I have all these very, very matte colours like the matte brown that I did with scale paints, and actually it's nice to have a little bit of those sparkly paints setting off against it. So yeah, it does look cool. I'm really glad I've done an army with that non-metallic effect. But if I ever finish my Lumineth army, then yeah, I'm glad that they're metallics. I hope you enjoyed this video. I think you could paint your whole Sylvaneth army using this tutorial, and I think soon I should do an overview looking at my entire army. I hope one day in the old world they redo some wood elves, and then you're going to get those tutorials from me. But for now, enjoy these Sylvaneth, and I'll see you next time.